campus-wide deferred maintenance and capital renewal backlog. We understand fully that when the backlog is not addressed, that cost will eventually continue to go up. The subcommittee has always had as the top priority those projects that have life safety implications. We understand the ability to maintain and keep in appropriate working order the buildings and grounds which cover more than 17.4 million square feet of facilities and more than 570 acres of grounds on and off the Capitol campus has been a difficult task. Also, before we begin, we'd like to express our condolences for the loss of one of your own, Matthew McClanahan, and our heart goes out to his family and the entire AOC organization.
Thank you.
And with that, Mr. Ryan, do you have an opening statement?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very brief one. None of us could do our jobs without you here, and we know when we get our visitors, they take selfies with the Capitol behind them. We know that that's your handiwork there. The Botanic Garden, we have you to thank, so we appreciate all of your good work. We know that several thousand people that you supervise do everything from maintaining office buildings, caring for hundreds of acres of landscape, as the chairman just mentioned, executing major construction projects, operating a power plant, to restoring historical artwork on the walls of the Capitol. This is our home. This is where we work. My 3-year-old says, "Daddy, are you going to the Capitol?" You know, that's where Daddy works, and it's a pretty cool thing, and it's cool that everyone has access to this beautiful facility. So we thank you. We've got a lot of work ahead of us in a tough budget year, but we look forward to hearing from you and working with you.
Thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Mr. Ryan. Any other members wish to make opening remarks? Seeing none, then Mr. Ayers, your entire statement will be submitted for the record. We have it here before us, but please feel free to summarize your testimony at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Yoder and Ranking Member Ryan and members of the subcommittee, appreciate the opportunity today to present to you our fiscal year 2018 budget request. Our request of $773 million prioritizes people and projects that are required to fulfill our mission to serve the Congress, the Supreme Court, and America's capital, and to inspire memorable experiences every day for those 2.2 million people you mentioned. Over the last 2 decades, our footprint has increased substantially, and today we operate and care for more than 17.4 million square feet of space across 36 different facilities and 570 acres of land. And the complexity of our work has also changed significantly. In 2006, we hosted nearly 4.5 million visitors through the Capitol and United States Botanic Garden from the United States as well as from around the world. And during this time, not only has our office kept up with, but we think we've staked a leadership role in using innovative technology and addressing the important security concerns that face us every day. Our employees work around the clock to maintain our buildings and to ensure the health and safety of those who work and visit the Capitol campus each day. And we couldn't be successful without the hard work and skill and commitment of the more than 2,100 employees that make up our workforce. Last year at this hearing, I promised that 2016 was going to be a banner year for us, and I'm delighted to report that we delivered on all of our projects last year. We successfully completed the Capitol Dome restoration and Rotunda restoration on time, within budget, with minimal disruption to the building occupants. We conducted the post-election biennial office moves for more than 199 members of Congress of the House of Representatives in just 24 injury-free workdays. And as we have for more than 150 years, we supported the work of the presidential inauguration this past January as well. As substantial and historic as some of our recent accomplishments are, regular preventive maintenance is the best defense against deterioration and rising costs. Budget constraints continue to slow our ability to perform regular inspections and regular and routine maintenance to improve the functionality of our facilities and infrastructure. We often rely on temporary fixes to buy time, and often that's just not quite enough. Our fiscal year 2018 budget includes $25 million in overdue operational increases to meet the demands of what we think are mandatory cost increases that address critical repairs to reduce the risk of future failures. Our request will provide for the resources necessary for day-to-day maintenance, thereby avoiding costlier fixes in the future. And it will also slow the growth of the $1.55 billion in backlog of deferred maintenance the chairman mentioned earlier. In addition to our risk-based prioritization process, or using our risk-based prioritization process, we are requesting $240 million in capital projects this year. Nearly 70% of those are specifically for repair or replacement projects that are past due or for systems that are approaching the end of their useful life. We're requesting funds to replace obsolete chillers at the Capitol Power Plant that date back to the 1970s. Our efforts to eliminate water infiltration through the stone restoration on many of our buildings is also part of our budget. We're requesting funding for the next phases of the Cannon House Office Building renewal, as well as the Rayburn House Office Building Garage project, and these jobs continue to progress on time and on budget as well. We're also making an important priority of security improvements that you will see in our budget this year as well. We continue to drive down injury rates. We're driving down and driving up our energy efficiency and driving down our energy costs at every opportunity. And with your support, I think we can continue to make the Capitol campus accessible to all and ensure that it remains a vibrant display of our democracy. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. At this time, we will turn to questions, alternating between members. I'll go ahead and start. I wanted to follow up a little bit on the Cannon House Office Building project. And to date, $440.9 million of the projected budget has been provided. For fiscal year 18, you're requesting $62 million in no-year funds for the project. Can you tell the committee the amount of prior year funding that is currently available for the AOC's use on the project? What are the specific significant actions that require funding for next fiscal year? What do you expect you to actually spend on that next year? And I think probably all want to know, is the project on time, and is it going to stay within budget? And how's that coming?
So we have developed a budget for that project of $752.7 million, and that budget has been in place for 6 or 8 years, and we continue to maintain that cost estimate. And we've done very complicated quantitative and qualitative cost and schedule analyses using, I think, the best technology available, and we continue to have more than 80% confidence rate that we will meet both schedule and cost on that project. This was an important year for us as we transitioned from phase 0, the work in the basement, into phase 1, which is the west side of that building. And we completed phase 0, and we completed that under budget. We probably have $15 million left from phase 0 that we will roll over into phase 1. And so that was done on time and considerably under budget. We're 15% or so into phase 1, and we're continuing to track right on time and right on budget. So all of our indicators today say we're going to meet our schedule and meet our numbers, and we're pretty confident in it.
You said you used some technological advancements in phase 0 that have sort of advanced the project and saved you a little bit of money in phase 0. Do you anticipate changes over the coming years that might be able to save us money on this project? I mean, ideally, we'd love to come in under budget, be able to save the taxpayers money, and I guess, what's the process to do that as you're examining this? Is that something that's feasible? I don't want you to raise the bar here and then not be able to meet that, but I'm just getting an idea of what the future looks like.
And so, on a construction project like this, we have a series of risks that could potentially happen, and included in our budget are funds to help us mitigate those risks. So if those risks don't come to fruition, that money remains available for either to go back to the Treasury when this job is finished or to roll into some other project.
So part of this is risk aversion, too.
Absolutely. Well,
right?
everything about construction
Yeah.
is minimizing risk, and so if we do a good job minimizing risks and ensure that the potential risks don't come to fruition, we think that it'll come in considerably under budget. And so there's a couple of things. One, on phase one. Phase one is our riskiest phase of all of them, all of the 5 phases of that project. The most important thing we needed to do on phase one is to award that phase early. As you know, we really don't start it until January. Well, we awarded that contract for that phase of work in April. And so that allowed our contractor to spend several months before physical construction work, getting all of their contracts and subcontracts awarded, getting all of their submittals and engineering work done. That was a really important risk mitigation. I think also on phase one, the second riskiest operation, in my opinion, is about to take place next month when we put on a temporary roof structure over the 5th floor roof and then begin to demolish the entire 5th floor and reconstruct that 5th floor under that temporary roof structure. If we can do that successfully on the first phase, learn some lessons as we then begin to incorporate that on phase 2, 3, and 4, I think that could save us some money as well.
So you're completely demolishing the 5th floor?
Yes.
What are you doing to it in terms of maybe higher ceilings, or is it the office is gonna look different in some way?
Yes, they will look completely different. In fact, on the 5th floor today, you have offices on one side and storage
Yeah.
cages on the other side.
Yeah.
And in the new design, you'll have offices on both sides. And they're generous, nicely sized, appropriately designed offices for a member of Congress. Many of them with a great view of the Capitol, by the way.
So you have.
When do we put our requests in?
Yeah, right. Right. Starting now. So one of the challenges I know you have is it's an occupied building. You might just tell the committee how you've negotiated around, construction project in a building that's occupied, what specific sort of challenges that's brought on, how that's been handled. Have there been any disruptions that the committee should know about that have been unforeseen or that you've had to resolve?
Well, of course, doing a major construction project in an occupied building is the worst thing you could do. We can start with that, but that's what we're faced with doing. And so I think number one is communicating to building occupants of what's happening, what's coming up, what to expect, and no surprises. And so we have a team of communication specialists dedicated on this job that do just that spend their day talking to building occupants, making the rounds, keeping our social media and electronic messaging system up to date, making sure we have good signage around the building so people know what's about to happen before it happens. Thirdly, since it is an occupied building, we drive all of our noise-making activities to nighttime. And so obviously that adds about a 10% cost in labor cost to any project, but it's an important and necessary thing for us to do, as construction is in many respects inherently noisy. I would say fourthly, making sure we carefully monitor the air quality, water quality, odors, and things like that could emanate from the construction activities, and make sure we monitor them and abate them as necessary.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, we want to, on behalf of my whole staff, thank you for the ramps you put up for the ducks to get into the reflecting pond. It's been a topic of conversation in our office. So we want to thank you for that. I've got a couple questions, and I actually want to get in the weeds on a couple and just kind of get your thoughts. First, we know that the United States Department of Agriculture has a program they call the People's Gardens, and they set up gardens at federal agencies all around the country, help grow healthy food and get people in communities engaged. The first one was in 2009, so several members, Ms. Pingree, myself, Ms. Capter, have suggested that your office partner with USDA to start one of these people gardens on the Capitol grounds. I think it's a good idea. We had some earlier conversations about bringing a slightly healthier culture to the employees here on the campus. Is that feasible, or are you exploring anything along those lines?
I think we're doing a couple of things. Let me share them with you. First, this is the centennial of the Great War, World War I, and so part of the centennial exhibitions that we're putting together in the Capitol Visitor Center to educate the public about that war. We're also, we have installed 3 victory gardens over at the Thomas Jefferson Building, and there are 3 of them in place now, and they basically take, and we're growing food and educating the public about how to grow food that was typical for about 1917, 1918. And so they're in place now. There's great signage over there that's happening now, and much of that food that we do harvest, we donate to local food banks. Secondly, for the last 3 years, we've been focused on urban agriculture. We think that's an important thing to educate the public about, and that's really our mission at the United States Botanic Garden, is to educate the public about the value of plants in our society. And so our director there, Dr. Ari Novi, it's a particular passion of his, urban agriculture, and we've had 3 shows the last 3 years, and our current show is actually indoors, and we're teaching people how to grow vegetables in vegetable gardens in towers, sort of vertical gardening. And so we have a current exhibit in the garden about that now. So that's what we're doing today, and we're certainly open to continuing that kind of thing. I think educating the public about the value of urban agriculture and how to and the value of plants, and we'd be happy to do something like that.
Yeah, no, that's very cool. How much of the technical expertise, so Library of Congress, for example, they try to help libraries in Kansas and Ohio with some technical expertise, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. What do you, like with the Botanic Gardens, is there any kind of program that would help people in Youngstown, Ohio, learn how to do a vertical garden? I mean, is that something that you guys participate in, and if you do, what level do you participate?
We do. We have, I guess, a couple of things. One is a botanic hotline, and so if you're having plant issues or plant problems or pest problems, we do have a hotline that you can call in to our really talented plant specialists, and they'll help you diagnose and find ways to fix problems that you might be having with plants. One. Secondly, we have a number of partnerships across the country with other botanic gardens to put on symposia about things like urban agriculture, or to host shows about backyard gardening, or to host a show about a particular plant variety. And we have some appropriated dollars that enables us to reach out to these partners across the country. And so I think we have 4 or 5 or 6 of them now that we do, and we change them every few years.
There's such a huge interest now across the country in urban ag, in older cities, you know, like in Ohio and Toledo and Youngstown and Akron. We've come in and cleared out a lot of the old homes, and they're in food deserts where there's not a grocery store for a couple miles. So I think this is an opportunity to help, you know, after school and the whole 9 yards. But we'll be in touch on some of that stuff. So on the construction side that Mr. Yoder was talking a little bit about, I know when we do local projects in Ohio that we're involved in, construction projects, we use a lot of different tools that are in the toolbox for private investment. So, for example, a business will come in and use the local port authority. The port authority has the capacity to buy material and not pay tax on it. And so the business will work with the port authority will go and buy the bricks and the mortar and the wood and the nails and all the stuff that would be needed, and save the private investor, potentially tens of thousands, if not, depending on how big the project is, hundreds of thousands of dollars just as a kind of a pass-through. Do you guys use any tool like that here in the Capitol that would allow you to save some money and get more money into projects? Do you get everything tax-free? I mean, you contract it out? Just, can you walk me through that process?
Well, I think basically it's tax-free.
So you guys, your office goes out and buys all the material for you're gonna build this 5th floor and you're gonna redo it and you're gonna buy all kinds of stuff to construct that. Do you buy that yourself?
No, contractor buys that.
The contractor buys that. So the contractor would pay sales tax on stuff that they would buy, right?
I believe so, yes.
I mean, in the normal course of affairs, course of business. So I'm just trying to think of ways that, we can get more bang for our buck here, and if there are opportunities for us, I don't know if you have some people on your staff that you could maybe charge to look into those things, because 4, 5, 6% of $100 million, build a few extra offices.
Yes.
So if you could do that.
Sure.
and look into that. The other thing, and I know we have the historic trust fund where we're putting
Yes.
some money in. Is there, and I'm literally thinking out loud here, as you can maybe tell, but again, for local construction projects, we use the Port Authority in the bonding capacity of the porting authority. Have we looked into like floating some bonds and expediting a lot of this work that needs to get done and then paying it down over time? Is that, you're straight appropriations, right? I mean, you get money in, money out.
No, not 100%. We do have limited authority, statutory authority, to enter into public-private partnerships. Our statutory authority permits us to do that on energy-related projects. And so we have 3 of them in place, actually 4 in place right now. The first 3 are valued at about $90 to $100 million of private money. And they came into the House office buildings, the Senate, and the Capitol, and made investments in our infrastructure, which saves money. And you continue to appropriate the same amount for our utility costs, but our costs go down, so we pay them back with a differential. We're about to do, since those 3 have been in place for 3 or 4 years and have been incredibly effective for us and have paid back their guaranteed savings every year, we're going to do a 4th one at the Library of Congress. We're in negotiations right now for that. And a 5th one we have in construction for about $106 million at the Capitol Power Plant, where a private company will come in and put in a new combined heat and power system, and we'll pay them back over the course of 20 years for that investment with the energy savings they prove for that.
So the private business gives you the money up front.
Correct.
Yeah. Is there any
Or
way?
private, yeah, a contractor installs it, then they get private financing to do it.
Right.
And sometimes they do that through bonds, or they do it through direct loans as well.
Is there any way to expand that program into other more traditional construction?
I think there is. I do think it would require statutory authority, though. Statute today only allows us to do that for energy-related projects.
Go back.
Mr. Taylor? Okay. Ms. Washington Schultz?
Thank you. Down in the microphone. Mr. Ayers, thanks for the really incredibly good job that you have done in your stewardship over the architects of the Capitol, and thanks to your staff, because I think they're among the finest in the country.
Thank you.
You're welcome. How much is in the Historic Building Preservation Trust Fund right now?
I do have that number. Well, to date, I know that $440 million has been appropriated total in the fund. 316 of it is into the House Historic Buildings Revitalization Trust Fund, and 124 million of it has now been put into the Cannon Building project.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know I don't want to presume that you're unfamiliar or familiar with, a number of years ago, we established the House Historic Preservation Revitalization Trust Fund for the very reason that drove your question, because, and I alluded to Mr. Ayers' predecessor, when we built the Capitol Visitor Center, the cost overruns were astronomical. It was not on time, not on budget, and there was nothing fiscally responsible about it, including any process or protocol or accountability in place to make sure that we could stay on top of it. And we took over the oversight of that project, along with GAO, which we assigned oversight to, and sort of reined it in and got it finished. But then we established this trust fund, given that we were going to go through Cannon, Longworth, and Rayburn's renewal, the garages, and we've got really billions of dollars of revitalization to do. So we've been banking that money, and a couple of fiscal years ago, we, instead of directly, we separated out the way we line item it in the architect's budget, so we could see what we were banking for this particular fiscal year into the historic trust fund, and what they had in it, and that they were spending, so that we could make sure we could see it more clearly. So, what is your proposal in your budget for FY18 to add to the trust fund?
So in our 2018 budget, it's $10 million, and can I take a minute to expand on that?
Yeah, please.
And so you and I have had some discussions about what's the right investment scenario that we should be investing in.
Right.
And we have spent, as I committed we would do, we spent the summer looking at that. And I was briefed on it a few months ago, and I'm not comfortable that we have thought of every possible option yet. The investment strategies that I saw were impractical and unsustainable, and I think we need to go back to the drawing
As
board.
in we're investing too little?
Correct.
Yeah, that's been my concern too.
Correct, yeah, and so clearly I think
mean
10
we're
million
saving?
is too little, but I also think that I can't come to you and say I need $200 million a year, which is roughly what our proposal said. So I've asked our team to go back to the drawing board and bring in some different kind of thinkers for us, some developers and some real estate professionals, to help us think differently about the investment structure and what we need to do and when. And so with our 2017 omnibus, we now have money to bring those experts on. And we'll continue with that, and I think when we get something that we think we're comfortable sharing with you, we will. We're working on it.
That's great. Last fiscal year at these hearings, we initially, when we created the trust fund, I think put in $50 or $70 million, and we had 70, and then I think 50, maybe 50 the next year. We had put much more significant amount of funding in initially, and we've only been doing $10 million increments in the last few. And given the very significant amount of money we're going to have to spend in increasing amounts over time, I asked Mr. Ayers last year to take a look at, what was the right amount. So it's just something that, in terms of our accountability and oversight, that we should monitor. Thank you. And also, I thank you for taking care of the ducks.
Thank you.
How is that going, by the way? The ducks.
Ducks are terrific.
I saw a
Yeah,
video
there
of
are
them climbing
4
up.
broods out on the Capitol reflecting pool today,
Do
and
they have names,
the
these
duck
ducks?
ramps are in
Do they
use.
have names, these ducks, or?
Not yet,
Okay.
but Twitter has been on fire for a few days. They will have names soon, I'm sure.
Hey, naming rights, we can generate.
There you go. Put that in the trust fund.
I'm sorry. When
Ms. Wasserman Schultz?
Just the only other, sorry, I wanted to just ask you about the lead issue in Cannon and where we are. If you could give us an update on where we are with the lead abatement.
Sure. Two things. First, I just want to acknowledge that Mr. Molinar and I spoke earlier, and he suggested that perhaps it's time for us to go back and communicate to staff with an update
Yeah.
of where we've been. We did a great job, I think, communicating with the Congress of sort of through the crisis, and we have not sort of communicated since then. So perhaps now is a good time to communicate back to the Congress, maybe with some town halls or something about where we stand. And so we will do that. We brought in a consulting team to help us figure out what happened and where the lead was coming from. As we anticipated, there is no sort of smoking gun that this is it, but we did find a number of things. One, that it's very likely that the construction activity on all of those water pipes contributed to a lead problem. Two, the consulting team found pretty significant variability in the chemical makeup of the water in the building. Water pipes, especially those with lead content, like very stable pH and very stable chlorine amounts in water. And the test results showed that those things, both the pH and the orthophosphate and the chlorine levels, had very significant variability, which could result in lead leaching from pipes. And so they recommended that we take some action to better control the variability of those things. And we've done some of that. They suggested that we implement a significant and regular flushing program. We've started that. And they also, I guess I would point out that they said that the lead problems in the building persist today. And so I think from my perspective, they do continue to persist. I think it's the best plan for us to leave the water turned off. And
So you're still providing bottled water?
we are continuing to do that, and we'll do so to the end. And you know, throughout the basement, we've replaced all of that piping. As we finish phase one, we'll replace all of that piping. From an engineering perspective, we don't see any reason why we couldn't turn the water on when phase one, when members move back in, because everything is completely new. It should be okay. So I think that's the first
And when-
opportunity.
and when is that?
That is the next election move cycle,
Okay.
which is a year and a
18,
half
so.
from now, yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Ayers, we've talked a lot about the Cannon project. We know the Rayburn Garage project is continuing. I've had a chance to tour that. Last year, we provided $30.8 million for that project. This year, request includes $31 million for the third phase of 4. You might give us a little update on its progress, on time, under budget, the same sort of questions we had on Cannon. You're also taking responsibility of the O'Neill building. If there's any specific updates the committee should be aware of there. And then there's the capital power plant. We know we've deferred the revitalization of the West refrigeration plant for several years now due to funding constraints. Your fiscal 2018 request includes $19.19 million to continue this project. You might update us on the situation there and what would occur if we're not able to provide those funds and the impact. And then lastly, so it's sort of 3 separate questions, and the last thing would just be the deferred maintenance list. So we've alluded to $1.5 billion. Ms. Wasserman Schultz has brought up some of the long-term projects. What else is out there? What's next after Cannon, Rayburn, taking over O'Neill, the chillers? Like, what are your other big projects, both in the coming years and long-term?
So, Rayburn Garage first. We are undertaking a complete renovation of the Rayburn Garage. The concrete floor decking in the garage was unsafe, and concrete was falling off, and steel rebar inside the concrete was rusting and causing the concrete to fall off. Very unsafe condition. And we are well into phase 1 of 4 phases on that project. We are under budget and on time. Each of those phases will take about 14 months to complete, and we don't see any issues with turning over those phases one after the other. So we're pretty comfortable on that job. The O'Neill House Office Building moves over to our control on June 8th, and we've been incredibly busy the last few months putting together a comprehensive plan and schedule of what we need to do when to make that happen, and people we need to hire and contracts we need to award, and working with the United States Capitol Police, the Chief Administrative Officer, and all of our legislative branch partners who all have a piece of that. We've been working together extremely well. We think we're ready for June 8th. I know the Capitol Police believe they're ready for June 8th as well. And we haven't hired all those people we need, but we've hired many of them. We're partnering and have spent a considerable time with GSA, understanding how they run and operate the building and what contracts they have in place, and things as mundane as cleaning and trash collection and getting the trash out of the building to the right place, to taking care of the green roof on the top of the building. We think we have a handle on what we need to do to make that successful. We feel pretty good about that. You know, at the Capitol Power Plant, I mentioned in my opening statement that we still have 2 chillers from the 1970s. This is equipment that is now 35, 37, 38 years old that just is not efficient. Chillers today are at least 50% more efficient than chillers of the 1970s era. And, you know, we're sitting in a nice, cool room today due to the chillers at the Capitol Power Plant that are making chilled water and sending it out through underground tunnels to create air conditioning throughout all of our buildings. And I know I'm quite convinced, and we often talk about, because it's such an anomaly of how important the Capitol Power Plant is to congressional operations. We have many other buildings that we think could go offline and that Congress could continue to do its business. But rest assured, in July, if we're not able to air condition any building, I don't think the Congress is going to be able to undertake its business. So it's important, and this equipment regularly fails to start when we need additional chilling capacity, and we start the equipment and it fails to start. And so we have considerable trouble with it. Looking forward to that investment. And I know we've funded sort of part of that already, and we're hopeful that.
What's the total project cost to fix the concerns there?
Well, I think it's $180 million, the total job.
How much have we already appropriated?
I don't know the answer to how much we've already appropriated, but I can send you that.
You've got 19.19 in your 2018 budget request.
Correct.
And then what's on the horizon? What are the deferred maintenance projects that create? I've looked through the list a bit, but can you give the committee sort of a broad brush, the 1.5 billion in deferred projects?
Absolutely. I think one of the interesting things in our budget, for those that might have a budget book on here, we do give you a list of projects that we think need to go in the budget, and there are 23 of them. But we also give you a list of projects that we've deferred, projects that need to be done, that are ready to be done, but we have deferred them to another fiscal year because through our project prioritization process, they don't rise to the top. Many of them are continue to be infrastructure projects. There's some electrical projects and transformer projects on there, wiring replacements, piping replacements for the Capitol building, projects like that. I think in the House, we've taken a sort of a little bit of different approach. Instead of doing individual line item projects, we'll take many of these and group them together like we're doing with the Cannon project. The Cannon renewal is really 10 or 20 other projects lumped into one big renewal project. We think that's probably the right approach to continue with the house. We've not made decisions yet whether the Rayburn or Longworth is appropriate to move towards next, but I think for the house, that's the next big thing, is after the Cannon Building runs out, to undertake one of those.
Okay. Mr. Ryan?
You know, as I hear, just to reiterate my point last time, these projects are 1.5 billion today, in 10 years are gonna be a hell of a lot more.
Yes.
And how we can potentially use some bonding capacity to be able to get this stuff done when labor's cheaper, product's cheaper, you know, all this stuff is a lot cheaper. I think that's worth us digging a little deeper and trying to explore the opportunities, Mr. Chairman. I mean, this is, you know, can only imagine what things are gonna cost 10 years from now if we keep on the trajectory we're on now. So, wanted to reiterate that point. Also, if you could give us an update on the investigations to the tragedy that Mr. Yoder mentioned in his remarks with Matthew McClanahan. I know there were 2 or 3 different groups looking into it. If you could give us a little bit of an update on, you know, lessons learned, I guess.
Sure, happy to, and we will follow up with you on the bonding and other ideas that.
I mean, if we're doing it for energy, we're able to do it.
Yes,
And
exactly.
So, you know, clear the deck, not clear the deck, but make a little bit more headway. So anyway, thank you.
And so thank you for recognizing Matt McClanahan. That was a tragic accident and a tragic event for us. I think we as an agency are continuing to reel from that a little bit and working hard to get ourselves refocused, most importantly taking care of Matt's family, which I think we have appropriately done. And I know they are incredibly appreciative of the work that we did and the support of the Congress as well. We have 4,300 trees across Capitol grounds. And so after this incident, we thought it appropriate that we have one of our certified arborists. We have 4 or 5 certified arborists on staff go out and look at every single one of those trees. That has been done. It's been done for 2 weeks now, 3 weeks now. We laid eyes on every single one. That led us to remove 7 trees. We thought 7 of them, they probably ought to come down. And so we took action and took those 7 trees down. We're now, after we looked at those 4,300 trees, we identified a little under 200 of them that we should come back and take a more in-depth, or what we call a level 2 investigation on. We are halfway through that investigation. We'll have that done by the end of the month. And I think that will give us a much better handle on where we stand on our tree program. We do have, I think, and I've told the group this so many times, a really good and dedicated and professional set of tree care professionals that take care of our trees across the Capitol campus. They're really taking this news hard, but I can assure you they have nothing but the public safety in mind and the work that they do. And they're continuing to go about their work. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, it's just so beautiful to just walk through, and I remember when Mr. Murtha died, and we went out and we dedicated a tree to him. It really hit home how much thought goes into every little detail of the campus, and I want to thank you for that, and I appreciate your work. So
Thank you.
Mr. Taylor?
All my questions have been answered.
Okay. Ms. Wasserman Schultz?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank
With
you.
that, where's my notes here? Remind the committee, we have a hearing tomorrow at 10 a.m. and we have a hearing tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. And so at this point, the subcommittee will adjourn until tomorrow at 10 a.m. when we will hear from the U.S. Capitol Police.
Thank you.